Please stay at home.
We must all stay at home.
You must stay at home.
More than 3 years on, and the pandemic may be over. But now there's another health crisis lurking beneath the surface. Students, like us all, live through experiences not seen for generations, and it's had a profound and lasting impact. AJ started university in 2020. She couldn't mix with her new flatmates, and classes were all online.
Definitely, I had...
As someone already living with depression and anxiety, lockdown hit hard.
At the time, it was just sort of like, oh my God, this has gotten too far. I've never felt like this before, and it was just sort of like, oh my God, who do I talk to about it? I can't put it on my flatmates because that is such an intense thing to put on people that you've only known for what, a maximum of 4 months at this point. You've only just started living with them. That it was just sort of like, who do I go to?
The past 3 years have been difficult for AJ. Moving from her home in Forres, she was looking forward to university life, full of new experiences and good memories.
Do you feel robbed of a traditional sort of uni experience?
Yes, 100% robbed. Robbed is probably the experience that most people would use, at least that I know, to describe starting uni in 2020, because we were sort of just left to deal with it. And the jump from secondary school to university is already huge, and not having in-person experiences can just make it so much worse, because you are quite literally just left by yourself with nothing to help you.
Months in lockdown meant many faced isolation, loneliness, far removed from loved ones for the first time. All this during what's supposed to be the best years of their lives, but they turned out to be anything but. Instead, it has left some angry for the years they've lost. Emma Christie is now in her second year studying at university in Stirling. She was in her final year at school when the country locked down.
It affected my high school quite badly because I got hit. There is so much that you've lost, especially with people my age. It was difficult because we lost our 17th birthday. Being able to learn to drive and stuff was a big thing. Your 18th birthday, that was impacted, and then going off to higher education. So it is things that you look forward to about becoming an adult and leaving high school. We kind of didn't get any of that.
The pandemic was like nothing we'd ever seen before. It shut down schools, closed workplaces, and forced people to stay at home. Thousands died, and our health service creaked under the pressure. But above it all, lockdown was to save lives.
Think back to the spring of 2020, we were seeing what was happening in Italy, very close to home, hospitals overwhelmed and many people dying. The fear that that was going to come here, not only just in what we were seeing, but in what the modelling, of course, was telling us as well, what might happen. At that time, we had no vaccines, no antivirals, no treatments, weren't available to us at that time. So in order to protect ourselves, protect the NHS and save lives, the emergency panic button had to be pressed.
But pressing that button had consequences too. A survey of students found over half said their mental health was worse than before COVID.
Definitely more young people come to therapy. Definitely a lot more of them come with anxiety and loneliness. I also see a lot of grief, and it's not necessarily grief because someone they love died. It's actually grief for lost years. And for those students who got caught in pandemic in the first couple of years, it creates a lot of anger. It creates a lot of why now? Like someone said, I feel like I've been robbed. And this anger, they are dealing with that, but they don't know, they don't have social skills to deal with it. They don't have now language to express it.
Let's take a step out.
But for some young people, a simple lack of confidence has been the hangover of the pandemic years.
Let's play, shall we? Yes, here we go.
At Robert Gordon University, they've started coaching sessions in a bid to help students' social skills.
So we're going to make sure we're making eye contact and pointing quite deliberately. Yeah. Apple.
Well, I think while we were in lockdown and we were teaching online, there was a sense that student confidence was dissipating, really. People didn't want to have their cameras on, they didn't want to have their microphones on, they didn't even want to talk to each other on Zoom calls. And when we came back after lockdown, there was a noticeable fear. We had students who literally felt uncomfortable giving you their name out loud in a class. And when it came to actually having any kind of conversation or social skills, they felt that they had really faded away while they had been in lockdown.
One of my favourite quotes I use when I get nervous is "do it scared."
The students here are encouraged to face their fears. Tanya used to be confident and outgoing, but the pandemic changed that.
How I see it is the more you put yourself in the scary situations and survive, the quieter the voice in your head becomes. Going from being by yourself and quite cooped up and not having to read in each other's facial expressions and what people are like, it became quite difficult now you're out of it to regain that skill. But then coming out of lockdown, it's reintroducing that, and there's a lot of people everywhere in places, and there's that wariness of, do I keep myself to myself, or how close do we get?
We spend most of our day thinking about
The first year Judith Stephen ran these sessions, the lack of confidence in students was something she's never seen before.
The first group came in, they were hiding. Their hoods were up, their masks were on, their eyes were down. They weren't interacting with each other at all. They were very, very difficult to get them to actually say words out loud, even their name out loud, you know. So that was a very kind of, I think actually quite shocking to me at the time.
For some young people, building up the confidence lost over the past 3 years is vital for their future.
I think there was a funny period where you'd go from being confident as ever and then going back to in your shell, and then I think these classes definitely help to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and what you would probably struggle with before, it's definitely better now.
For those that have seen their mental health impacted by lockdown, asking for help is often the hardest step. But getting that support isn't always easy.
I have actually been on the waiting list for psychotherapy for about 1.5 years. First made the first phone call being like, I want to get this under control, and then it's 1 year from you being on the waiting list that I actually got help.
And AJ is not alone. Almost 3,000 people in Scotland in the last year have waited more than 1 year to access psychological therapies. Mental health charity Sam H saw an almost 50% increase in demand for its services during the pandemic. Universities have tried to help students who are still feeling the fallout from lockdown. But there is only so much they can do.
It's also important, I think, to recognise universities aren't the NHS, you know, and it's important that we're not trying to replace that. I always refer to this as a bit of a jigsaw puzzle of support, and it's about where we fit into that. So, you know, universities, including ourselves at Stirling, we have invested significantly over the last few years in mental health support, wellbeing support, counselling support, for example. But that has to be complementary to those professional services.
They've been described by some as the COVID or lost generation, the young people that grew up during lockdown. The concern is the lasting impact it could have on their lives and livelihoods. But for some, there is real hope that this generation won't let COVID define them.
I am looking forward to the future. I am looking forward to not being in uni, because I think there is just that a bit more understanding from people in the work world that, yeah, COVID did have a knock-on effect and you are part of the COVID cohort, as it was.
It's definitely not a lost generation. If we look back, yes, there are young people who suffered, struggled, and we still see the consequences of what happened. We can never call the generations who experienced the adversity lost generations, because we've seen a lot of creativity coming from it, a lot of resilience growing from it. So I definitely couldn't call this generation a lost generation.